Months had passed since the concierge's first performance that had changed everything. His life, once steady and predictable, had taken on a rhythm of excitement, responsibility, and creativity. He continued his duties at the mansion with the same attention to detail, yet there was a new energy in the way he moved, a quiet confidence that those around him began to notice. The piano had become an integral part of his life, a constant source of inspiration, and a channel for his emotions. Opportunities to perform continued to grow. Invitations arrived from concert organizers, local cultural groups, and even educational institutions interested in giving their students a chance to witness real talent. Each request was considered carefully, as the concierge wanted to ensure that his music remained genuine and meaningful. He refused any engagement that felt superficial or forced, understanding that the true purpose of his gift was to connect with people and evoke emotion, not to chase recognition or fame. Preparation for each performance was rigorous. He practiced diligently, focusing not just on technical skill but also on expression and emotional depth. He experimented with different styles and interpretations, exploring the ways music could tell stories without words. Each rehearsal was an opportunity to refine his craft, to discover new possibilities, and to strengthen the connection between himself and the instrument. The piano had become an extension of his identity, a voice that communicated what words often could not. The mansion, too, had changed. Guests and staff treated the concierge with newfound respect, seeing him as more than a servant. His talent and dedication commanded admiration, not through status but through authenticity. Even the millionaire, who had once mocked him, now displayed a subtle admiration, recognizing the courage, skill, and humility that defined the concierge. There was an unspoken acknowledgement that true greatness is measured not by wealth or appearance, but by the integrity and dedication behind one's actions. One evening, the concierge was invited to perform at a city hall event, a prestigious opportunity that would allow him to reach a wider audience. The venue was grand, with a stage large enough to hold an orchestra, yet the focus would be solely on the piano for this performance. He arrived early to acquaint himself with the instrument, running his fingers lightly across the keys, feeling the subtle differences compared to the piano in the mansion. The acoustics, lighting, and atmosphere were unfamiliar, but he embraced the challenge with calm determination. As the audience filed in, the concierge took a moment to observe them, noting the anticipation and curiosity in their faces. This was a diverse crowd, ranging from seasoned music enthusiasts to casual listeners, yet he felt no fear or hesitation. Instead, he felt a deep sense of purpose. Each note he played would carry not only his skill but his story, the journey from obscurity to recognition, the dedication and resilience that had defined his path. He wanted the music to reach every listener, to resonate with them on a personal level, and to leave a lasting impression beyond the applause. When the performance began, the first notes were deliberate and soft, drawing the audience in gently. The melody unfolded gradually, revealing layers of emotion and technical mastery. The concierge played with precision, but also with a fluidity that made the music feel alive. Each phrase was shaped by his experience, each chord imbued with emotion, reflecting the countless hours of practice, the struggles, and the triumphs of his journey. The audience responded instinctively, leaning into the sound, captivated by the authenticity and beauty of the performance. As he progressed through the repertoire, the music shifted seamlessly between moments of intensity and gentle reflection. The audience could sense the story within the performance, a story of perseverance, discovery, and self-expression. The grand hall seemed to become part of the music, the acoustics amplifying not just the sound but the emotional impact. Faces in the audience reflected awe, inspiration, and even tears. As the power of genuine artistry moved through them, the concierge remained focused, fully present in the music, allowing the piano to communicate his message with clarity and depth. By the time he reached the final piece, the audience was completely immersed. The crescendo built, each note carefully timed and articulated, filling the hall with a rich, resonant sound. The music soared, capturing the essence of his journey and the emotional depth he had cultivated over years. Then, in a deliberate and graceful resolution, the final note fell, echoing gently and leaving a profound silence. The room held its breath as if reluctant to break the spell, before erupting into applause that was heartfelt, enthusiastic, and unrestrained. The concierge stood, acknowledging the audience with a humble bow. The applause continued, filling the hall with a sense of shared joy and appreciation. He felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that the music had connected with people on a level deeper than mere entertainment. He had shared his story, his talent, and his heart through the piano, and the response confirmed the power of authenticity, dedication, and courage. Following the performance, he was approached by fellow musicians, students, and organizers who sought guidance, collaboration, or simply conversation about his journey. He responded with patience and humility, sharing insights and encouragement while remaining grounded in his own path. The recognition, while gratifying, never overshadowed his commitment to growth, practice, and the integrity of his craft. Each interaction was an opportunity to inspire others, to foster appreciation for music, and to encourage the pursuit of one's own passions. At the mansion, life continued, enriched by the concierge's growing presence and influence. Staff and guests were inspired by his dedication and talent, and his performances became a celebrated aspect of the household's culture. The millionaire who had once mocked him now occasionally requested private performances, silently acknowledging the value and depth of the concierge's gift. Respect, admiration, and genuine connection had replaced ridicule, creating an environment where skill and character were recognized and appreciated. The concierge also began to explore teaching opportunities, helping young musicians develop their own skills and understanding of music. He discovered fulfillment in guiding others, sharing not just technical expertise but also the lessons learned from his journey: perseverance, humility, and the courage to embrace one's abilities. Through teaching, he realized that his impact extended beyond performance, influencing lives, inspiring confidence, and fostering a love for music in the next generation. He reflected on the path that had brought him here, the moments of doubt, the challenges, the unexpected opportunities, and the unwavering commitment to practice and growth. Each performance, each interaction, and each act of dedication had shaped not only his skill but his character and perspective. He understood that success is not measured solely by recognition, but by the depth of expression, the connections forged, and the positive influence one has on others. The concierge also embraced the quiet moments, when he could sit alone at the piano and explore new compositions, experiment with improvisation, and allow creativity to flow freely. These sessions were vital, grounding him in his passion and reminding him that the essence of his journey was the joy of expression and the power of music to communicate and heal. Each note played in solitude carried meaning and purpose, preparing him for the moments when he would share his gift with others. In these reflective moments, he realized that the journey was ongoing. There would always be challenges, new audiences, and opportunities to grow. Yet he felt confident and fulfilled, knowing that he had discovered his voice and embraced it fully. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a partner, a teacher, and a bridge connecting him to the world, to others, and to his own inner self. He looked toward the future with anticipation, ready to continue performing, teaching, and exploring new avenues for his music. The recognition, opportunities, and influence he had gained were meaningful, but the true reward lay in the ability to express himself, connect with others, and inspire through the universal language of music. Each performance was a chance to share a piece of his soul, to communicate beyond words, and to leave a lasting impact on those who listened. And so, the concierge continued his journey, balancing his responsibilities, his music, and the relationships he had cultivated. He remained humble, disciplined, and focused, guided by the principles that had shaped his path: dedication, authenticity, and a commitment to excellence. Through music, he had discovered not only a talent but a purpose, a way to enrich lives, inspire others, and honor the gift that had always been a part of him. The piano, the performances, and the connections forged through music became the defining elements of his life, a testament to perseverance, courage, and the enduring power of following one's true calling. After the applause of the second performance, the concierge felt a profound sense of fulfillment that went far beyond recognition or praise. The experience had been transformative not just for him, but for everyone who had witnessed it. He walked slowly through the halls of the mansion later that evening, his footsteps echoing softly against the marble floors. The echoes reminded him of the music, of the way each note reverberated in the grand space, reaching hearts in ways words could not. The staff had gathered quietly in small groups, exchanging excited whispers about the performance. They spoke not just of the skill but of the passion, precision, and emotion that had poured from the piano. The concierge paused at a doorway, observing the scene with a calm smile. Their admiration was genuine, born from witnessing something extraordinary, yet it did not inflate his ego. He understood that talent is a responsibility, and that humility strengthens respect more than any public display ever could. Later, as he returned to his modest quarters, he reflected on the growth he had experienced. Each performance had been a lesson, teaching him not just about music but about resilience, patience, and self-belief. The piano had become a mirror to his soul, reflecting years of quiet dedication and hidden potential. He knew that the journey was far from over. The world was vast, and the possibilities for sharing his music were endless. Each day brought a chance to explore, refine, and deepen his artistry. The millionaire, who had once mocked him, had begun to display a noticeable change in demeanor. Though he did not openly praise the concierge, he would observe him with subtle fascination, trying to understand the qualities that had led to such extraordinary performances. He began to realize that wealth, influence, and status were insignificant compared to talent, perseverance, and the courage to embrace one's abilities. This revelation was humbling, even for someone so accustomed to commanding attention. Encouraged by the positive responses and the growing confidence in his own skill, the concierge began to consider broader opportunities. Invitations to play at local events, intimate gatherings, and small concerts began to arrive, each one a chance to reach new audiences and share the gift he had nurtured for years. He approached each opportunity thoughtfully, carefully weighing how each performance aligned with his values and vision. His goal was never fame or recognition, but connection, expression, and the joy of creating music that resonated with people's hearts. Each practice session became a journey of discovery. He explored complex compositions, experimented with new interpretations, and focused on refining his technique. The piano allowed him to articulate feelings that were difficult to express otherwise, emotions that ranged from quiet introspection to vibrant joy. As he played, he felt a sense of liberation, a freedom that transcended the physical act of pressing keys. Music had become a language through which he communicated with the world, bridging the gap between his inner self and the audience. One evening, he received a letter from a local cultural association, inviting him to perform at a community festival. The opportunity was exciting, yet it brought a mix of anticipation and nervousness. Unlike the mansion, this festival would include a more diverse audience, including people who may not be accustomed to classical piano or formal performances. Still, the concierge saw it as a chance to connect with a wider range of listeners, to share his music in a way that was accessible and meaningful. He accepted the invitation with quiet determination, seeing it as the next step in his growing journey. The days leading up to the festival were filled with preparation. He practiced tirelessly, focusing on clarity, emotion, and the pacing of each piece. He experimented with dynamics, exploring how volume, tempo, and phrasing could enhance the impact of the music. Each note was deliberate, each transition purposeful. He reflected on past performances, identifying moments of strength and areas for improvement. This period of focused refinement reinforced his commitment to excellence, and he approached the festival not as a challenge to prove himself, but as an opportunity to connect, inspire, and communicate through music. On the day of the festival, the concierge arrived early, taking in the sights and sounds of the bustling crowd. The venue was open, with sunlight streaming through the trees and a gentle breeze carrying the scents of food, flowers, and laughter. People of all ages and backgrounds moved about, chatting and enjoying the festive atmosphere. The piano was set up on a small stage, simple yet dignified, and he approached it with a sense of calm focus, ready to share his craft with those who had gathered. When he began to play, the initial notes were soft, inviting the audience into the world of his music. People paused, turning their attention to the stage, curiosity and expectation mingling in their expressions. As the melody developed, it drew listeners in, capturing their imagination and emotions. Children stopped running, elderly couples leaned forward, and casual festival-goers stood still, absorbed by the music that seemed to rise above the everyday noise of the celebration. The concierge felt the energy of the audience, sensing the connection that was forming between the music and the people. Each note was infused with feeling, a dialogue between performer and listener. He allowed himself to become fully present in the moment, the piano serving as a bridge for expression, reflection, and shared experience. The audience responded with quiet appreciation, leaning into the nuances of the performance, letting the music resonate within them. As the performance continued, a subtle transformation occurred. The crowd, initially casual and diverse in their expectations, became attentive and engaged. Whispers of admiration spread, smiles appeared, and eyes brightened. Some listeners closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them while others nodded along with the rhythm. Caught in the flow of the melody, the concierge realized that music had a universal language, capable of touching people regardless of background, social standing, or prior knowledge. The climax of the piece arrived, a crescendo of emotion and technical mastery. The audience held its collective breath, aware that something extraordinary was unfolding before them. The final notes fell gently, leaving a resonant silence that lingered for a moment, allowing the impact to settle fully. Then slowly the applause began, growing into a full and heartfelt ovation. People stood clapping with genuine appreciation, moved not just by the technical skill, but by the sincerity, depth, and emotion conveyed in every note. The concierge stood quietly, accepting the admiration with humility. He had achieved something far greater than applause or recognition. He had created a shared moment of beauty and connection. In the faces of the audience, he saw the joy and inspiration that music could evoke, and he felt a profound sense of purpose. This was why he had devoted himself to his craft, why he had spent countless hours in practice, and why he had embraced the challenge of performance. The music was a gift, both to himself and to those willing to listen. Following the festival, invitations to perform continued to arrive, each one presenting a new opportunity to explore his talent and share his music. He carefully considered each, seeking experiences that aligned with his vision and values. Over time, he began to understand the broader impact of his journey. Not only had he discovered his own voice, but he had also inspired others to pursue their passions, to believe in themselves, and to recognize the potential that exists in unexpected places. Within the mansion, the concierge's presence continued to command quiet respect. Staff and guests alike recognized the dedication, talent, and integrity that defined him. Even the millionaire, once a source of mockery, now regarded him with a mixture of respect and admiration, a silent acknowledgement of the extraordinary qualities that had been revealed through music and perseverance. The dynamic of the mansion had shifted subtly, with recognition no longer tied solely to status, but to skill, character, and courage. As he continued his journey, the concierge remained grounded, aware that each performance, each practice session, and each interaction was an opportunity to grow, learn, and share. He understood that music was not a means to an end, but a lifelong journey of expression, connection, and discovery. The piano had become a companion, a teacher, and a mirror of his own soul, offering endless opportunities to explore, communicate, and inspire. Through it all, he maintained the humility and dedication that had defined him from the beginning. Talent, he realized, is only meaningful when accompanied by discipline, passion, and the courage to embrace challenges. Each day brought new lessons, new opportunities, and new moments of insight. The concierge's journey was ongoing, a testament to the power of perseverance, self-belief, and the transformative impact of sharing one's gifts with the world. The night of the second major performance arrived, and the concierge felt a mixture of calm anticipation and quiet excitement. The hall was smaller than the mansion, yet elegant and intimate, with soft lighting that created an atmosphere of focus and warmth. Guests began to arrive, settling into their seats and conversing softly, unaware of the depth of talent they were about to witness. The concierge stood backstage for a moment, letting his eyes adjust to the dim light, feeling the smooth, polished floor beneath his feet and listening to the subtle hum of the audience. As he prepared, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From the first mocking words of the millionaire to the applause of the mansion's guests, he had walked a path that was both challenging and rewarding. Every note he had played had been a step in reclaiming a part of himself that had been long hidden. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a voice for the emotions he could not otherwise express, a bridge between his inner world and the hearts of those who would listen. He moved to the grand piano on the stage, running his fingers lightly over the keys to feel the familiar resistance and warmth. The first notes he played were soft, tentative, as if testing the audience's patience and the room's acoustics. Then gradually the music began to flow. Each chord, each phrase carried intention and emotion. The melody rose and fell like a conversation, speaking of hope, struggle, and the quiet triumph of personal resilience. The audience was silent, captivated by the sound that filled the hall. They could feel the passion in every movement, the careful control of tempo and the depth of feeling in every chord. Some leaned forward in their seats, eyes wide with awe, while others closed their eyes, letting the music touch them deeply. It was a performance that demanded attention, not through spectacle, but through authenticity and artistry. The concierge allowed himself to be fully present in the moment, no longer conscious of the audience or their expectations. He felt the music guiding him, his hands and heart in perfect harmony, creating a living story that unfolded with each note. Memories of his past lessons, long hours of practice, and moments of quiet reflection intertwined with the melody, giving it a richness that could only come from lived experience. As the piece progressed, the audience's initial curiosity transformed into genuine admiration. Whispers of awe were replaced by a deep, focused silence. Each transition, each flourish, showcased not just technical skill but a profound understanding of the emotional weight of the music. The concierge played not to impress but to communicate, to create an experience that was shared and felt collectively. Backstage, he could feel the energy of the audience, even without seeing them. The connection was palpable, a silent exchange between performer and listener that transcended words. The music spoke for him, conveying messages of perseverance, hidden strength, and the beauty that arises from dedication and passion. It was a reminder that art, when expressed sincerely, has the power to touch hearts and shift perceptions. Midway through the performance, the music shifted, introducing a series of complex passages that required both precision and emotion. The concierge navigated each one with skill, his fingers moving gracefully across the keys. He felt a sense of liberation, of freedom in expressing himself fully through his craft. It was as if the piano had become an extension of his being, a channel for thoughts and feelings that had waited years to be heard. The audience responded with subtle gestures, leaning forward, nodding in rhythm and holding their breath during particularly delicate moments. The room became a living entity, shaped by the music and the shared attention of everyone present. It was a powerful experience, not just for the listeners but for the concierge himself, who realized that true artistry lies in the connection forged between creator and audience. As the final section approached, the music swelled to a crescendo, filling every corner of the hall with vibrant sound. The notes resonated with clarity and warmth, echoing the depth of his emotions and the intensity of his dedication. The crescendo slowly gave way to softer, more reflective passages, leading to a gentle and profound conclusion. When the last note lingered and faded into silence, the audience remained still for a heartbeat, absorbing the impact of what they had just witnessed. Then came the applause, spontaneous and heartfelt. It began softly, as if unsure whether it was appropriate to break the spell, then grew into a full and enthusiastic response. Guests rose to their feet, clapping with genuine admiration and respect. The concierge allowed himself a small, humble smile, feeling the satisfaction of having shared his music in its truest form. The applause was gratifying, but more than that, it was a confirmation that he had touched others through authenticity and talent. After the performance, several guests approached him, expressing their amazement and curiosity. Musicians offered praise, organizers suggested future opportunities, and ordinary listeners shared their gratitude for the emotional impact of the music. The concierge listened patiently, acknowledging each comment with humility. He was careful not to let the attention overwhelm him, understanding that recognition is a responsibility, not an entitlement. His focus remained on the music and the integrity of his expression. In the following days, he continued to practice and refine his skill, exploring new pieces and developing his own interpretations. The experience had deepened his understanding of music as a form of communication, an art that could express what words often fail to convey. He discovered that each performance, no matter how small, was an opportunity to share a piece of himself, to touch hearts, and to inspire others to appreciate the beauty and power of art. The millionaire, who had initially mocked him, now watched with a mixture of admiration and contemplation. He saw the dedication, talent, and humility that defined the concierge, recognizing that true greatness is measured not by wealth or status but by passion, discipline, and the courage to express oneself fully. The dynamic between them had shifted, marked by respect rather than ridicule, as the millionaire silently acknowledged the quiet power of genuine skill. Within the mansion, the concierge's influence subtly grew. Staff and guests alike began to approach him with respect, curiosity, and appreciation for his talent. He continued his duties with the same dedication as before, but there was a new dimension to his presence, a sense of confidence, authenticity, and quiet authority. People began to see him not just as a concierge, but as a person with unique gifts and the courage to share them. As weeks passed, he continued to perform, each time learning, refining, and growing. The piano became a partner in his journey, a tool through which he explored his emotions, honed his skills, and shared his story. He realized that music was not merely a profession or a hobby. It was a way of life, a way to connect with others and leave a lasting impression that transcended material circumstances. In these moments, he also reflected on the irony and beauty of life. A man who had spent years in quiet service, unnoticed and underestimated, had discovered a path that allowed him to shine in ways he had never imagined. The journey had been unexpected, full of challenges and doubts, yet it had revealed the extraordinary power of perseverance, humility, and dedication. He understood that true success comes not from recognition alone, but from the courage to embrace one's talents and the commitment to express them fully. And so, the concierge continued forward, balancing his duties with his passion, navigating a world that was beginning to see him in a new light. Each performance, each practice session, and each interaction was a step in a journey of self-discovery, artistic growth, and human connection. Through music, he had found not only a voice for his emotions, but also a bridge to others, a way to inspire, uplift, and touch lives. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was an extension of his spirit, a symbol of resilience and a testament to the power of following one's true calling. In the days following his unexpected performance, the concierge found himself drawn more and more to the piano. The mansion's grand instrument, which had previously been nothing more than an elegant piece of furniture, had transformed into a source of inspiration and purpose. Each morning, before attending to his duties, he would sit at the piano in the quiet of the hall, letting his fingers wander over the keys, exploring melodies and experimenting with rhythms. The notes carried a freedom he had longed for, a way to release emotions that had been locked away for years. The staff began to notice the change in him. He moved with a renewed energy, a sense of calm confidence replacing the quiet humility that had always defined him. There was a glow about him that others could not quite describe, as if the music had awakened something within, something that radiated without words. Housekeepers, maids, and other staff members would pause in their work to watch him play, marveling at the beauty that seemed to pour effortlessly from his hands. They whispered quietly among themselves, amazed that someone they had always seen as reserved and ordinary could possess such extraordinary talent. Word of the performance had spread beyond the mansion walls, reaching local musicians and enthusiasts who were curious about the mysterious concierge who could make a piano sing so beautifully. A few of them had even come by the mansion under the pretense of being guests, eager to witness his skill firsthand. The concierge, however, was not yet seeking an audience beyond those he encountered in his daily work. He wanted to refine his playing, to explore his abilities without the pressure of expectation. Each session at the piano was a personal journey, a way to reconnect with a part of himself that had been neglected for far too long. He experimented with different pieces, from classical compositions to more modern arrangements. He challenged himself with difficult passages, reveling in the mental and physical discipline required to master each note. At times he would pause, hands hovering above the keys, lost in thought as he considered how to best express the emotion behind the music. The piano had become not just an instrument but a companion, a mirror reflecting his inner world and the strength he had cultivated over years of perseverance. During one afternoon of practice, a young musician from the city approached him. Having heard of his talent, she was polite and respectful, speaking with genuine admiration rather than curiosity or skepticism. She asked if he would consider performing at a small local recital, a humble event meant to showcase new and undiscovered talent. The concierge hesitated, unsure if he was ready to share his music beyond the mansion's walls. Yet there was a spark of excitement at the thought of reaching an audience that might truly appreciate his skill. He agreed cautiously, seeing it as an opportunity to test himself in a new environment, while staying true to the music that had always been his focus. Preparation for the recital became an intense and rewarding process. Every spare moment he could find was spent at the piano, refining techniques, memorizing pieces, and exploring the nuances of expression. He discovered that music was not just about playing notes correctly, but about conveying emotion, telling a story, and connecting with listeners on a deep human level. He poured himself into every practice session, knowing that the experience would be different from anything he had done before. It was both thrilling and humbling, a reminder that mastery is a continuous journey rather than a destination. Meanwhile, the Millionaire's initial amusement at the concierge's talent had transformed into a complex mixture of pride, surprise, and, occasionally, jealousy. He would occasionally observe the concierge from a distance, witnessing the dedication and focus with which he approached the piano. It challenged the Millionaire's assumptions about talent, effort, and recognition. Though he would never openly admit it, he had begun to respect the concierge, realizing that true skill and artistry could not be measured by wealth or social position. In the mansion, the dynamic subtly shifted. Guests who once overlooked the concierge now regarded him with curiosity and, in some cases, admiration. Conversations about the piano and its player became common among staff and visitors alike. Yet the concierge remained humble, aware that attention could be fleeting and that respect is earned through consistent action, not a single performance. He focused on his craft, seeking improvement and refinement rather than public accolades. The music was his primary audience, his hands and heart communicating in ways words could not. The day of the recital arrived, and the concierge felt a blend of excitement and nerves. The venue was small but elegant, filled with people who had come to appreciate music rather than to be impressed by wealth or status. He arrived early, surveying the stage and familiarizing himself with the instrument. The grand piano, though different from the one in the mansion, felt welcoming. He ran his fingers lightly over the keys, sensing the vibrations and imagining the stories he wanted to tell through his music. When it was his turn to perform, he walked onto the stage with quiet confidence. The audience fell silent, the room filled with anticipation. He seated himself at the piano, took a deep breath, and let his fingers find the keys. The first notes were soft and delicate, setting the tone for the piece he had chosen. Gradually the music built, each phrase carefully considered, each melody infused with emotion. The audience was captivated, listening intently to the way he expressed feelings that transcended words. As he played, he noticed subtle reactions in the crowd, small smiles, glances of wonder, and even tears in the eyes of some listeners. The music had begun to connect, not just with individuals, but with the collective atmosphere of the room. He felt a profound sense of fulfillment, realizing that this was what he had always wanted, to communicate through music in a way that touched others deeply. The applause at the end of the performance was genuine and enthusiastic, not fueled by surprise or mockery, but by appreciation of the talent and heart behind the music. After the recital, several musicians and attendees approached him with questions, praise, and invitations to perform elsewhere. The concierge listened politely, offering gratitude but remaining grounded. He was careful to consider each opportunity, seeking those that aligned with his vision and integrity. He understood that while recognition was rewarding, it should not dictate his choices or compromise the authenticity of his music. He had learned that the value of talent lies not in fame, but in the depth of expression and the ability to touch hearts. In the following weeks, the concierge continued to practice diligently, exploring new pieces and refining his technique. The experience at the recital had strengthened his confidence and provided a new perspective on his abilities. He found joy not only in performance but also in the quiet moments of discovery during practice, the way music allowed him to explore emotions and ideas that he could not express otherwise. The piano had become a true companion, a source of inspiration and purpose that guided him through each day. At the mansion, the relationships between staff, guests, and the concierge continued to evolve. People began to recognize him not only for his role in service, but also for the depth of his character and talent. The millionaire who had once mocked him now treated him with a degree of respect that bordered on admiration. He observed the concierge with a new perspective, acknowledging that true excellence comes from dedication, passion, and humility rather than status or appearance. It was a lesson that he would carry forward, subtly reshaping his interactions and expectations. The concierge himself remained humble and focused. He understood that talent is a responsibility as much as a gift, and he approached each day with the goal of growth and improvement. He continued to balance his duties with his musical pursuits, integrating practice and performance into his daily life without allowing it to overshadow his responsibilities. The harmony between work and passion became a source of strength and satisfaction, reinforcing the values of discipline, perseverance, and authenticity. Over time, the concierge began to explore the possibility of sharing his music with a broader audience. He considered small performances, collaborations with other musicians, and even teaching opportunities for those eager to learn. Each idea was weighed carefully, ensuring that any step forward aligned with his principles and the essence of his artistry. He realized that the journey was as important as the destination, and that meaningful progress requires patience, reflection, and dedication. As he continued to embrace his talent, he found that the world around him responded in kind. People were drawn to the sincerity and passion that he displayed, whether through music or through his interactions with others. The sense of connection and mutual respect grew, reinforcing the belief that true recognition is earned through consistent effort and authenticity. The concierge had discovered a path that honored both his abilities and his character, creating a life enriched by purpose, creativity, and the transformative power of music. In this way, he moved forward, building on the foundation of his initial performance, exploring new horizons and sharing his gift in ways that felt true to himself. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a vehicle for self-expression, a bridge to understanding, and a reminder of the resilience and potential that lies within each person. With each note, he continued. After the music faded and the echoes of the final notes hung in the grand hall, the concierge quietly stepped back from the piano. The applause had begun, slowly at first, then growing stronger as more guests realized the depth of what they had just witnessed. Some clapped politely, unsure how to respond to such unexpected talent, while others could not contain their amazement. The millionaire, standing with a stiff posture, finally found his voice, but only to utter a weak, almost forced compliment. The concierge, however, paid little attention to the praise. His heart still raced, not from fear or nerves, but from the thrill of having reclaimed a part of himself that had been long hidden. Once the crowd began to disperse, returning to their drinks and conversations, the concierge retreated to a quiet hallway behind the hall. The sounds of laughter and chatter faded, leaving him in a peaceful silence. For a moment, he allowed himself to breathe deeply and reflect. The challenge had been met, but he knew that this was just the beginning. The performance had revealed his skill to the world, but it also meant that expectations would follow. People would watch him differently now, some with admiration, others with curiosity or even envy. He leaned against the wall, hands still tingling from the feel of the keys beneath his fingers. Memories of his childhood lessons returned vividly, the patient guidance of his first teacher, the long hours spent practicing scales, the tiny victories of mastering a difficult piece. Life had pushed him away from the piano, leading him into service work to support his family, but those memories had never left him. They had been waiting for a moment like this, a moment when talent, opportunity, and courage met. Despite the triumph, he felt a mix of emotions. There was pride, certainly, but also a quiet anxiety about what would come next. The guests, and perhaps the millionaire himself, might now expect even more performances. Fame, attention, and recognition were not things he had sought, and he wondered if he was ready to handle them. Yet underneath the worry was a deep satisfaction. He had proven something to himself, something far more important than earning the applause of strangers. He had proven that his talent was real and valuable, and that it could not be ignored. As he walked through the halls, he noticed a few staff members peeking around corners, their eyes wide with awe. They had seen his performance and felt inspired, though they dared not intrude. The concierge smiled quietly to himself. It was a strange feeling, being admired not for his diligence or efficiency but for something deeply personal and creative. The music had bridged a gap between who he was and how others saw him, and that bridge was fragile but powerful. Meanwhile, the millionaire gathered a small group of guests to discuss the event. His usual confidence was shaken. He had been so certain that his challenge would amuse the crowd and expose the concierge as just another servant. But the reality was very different. The man had talent, undeniable and extraordinary talent, and it had shown in front of everyone. The millionaire felt a pang of embarrassment, quickly hidden behind a forced laugh as he tried to redirect attention to other matters. Yet even as he spoke, he could not shake the image of the performance from his mind. There was something almost magnetic about the way the concierge had played, something that commanded attention and respect without a single word. Back in his small office, the concierge sat down at a worn wooden desk, letting his hands rest. He thought about the moments that had led him here, the sacrifices, the late nights, the moments of doubt and resilience. He realized that the performance had been more than just a response to a challenge. It had been a turning point. The piano had allowed him to express feelings he could never have spoken, to communicate a story of perseverance, passion, and hidden potential. And in doing so, it had changed the way people would see him from now on. As the evening wore on, he considered what he would do next. The opportunity to play in public, to show his talent on a larger stage, had presented itself unexpectedly. But he was cautious. He did not want to rush into the spotlight for the sake of attention or approval. He wanted to approach this carefully, preserving the integrity of his gift and ensuring that each performance was meaningful. The thought of future challenges did not frighten him. It excited him. Each note he had played was a reminder that he was capable of more than he had allowed himself to believe. That night, he returned to his modest quarters with a sense of quiet satisfaction. He sat by a small window, looking out at the city lights below, reflecting on the irony of life. A man who had spent years unnoticed and underestimated had suddenly stepped into a moment where his true self was recognized. It was a humbling experience, one that reminded him of the value of patience, practice, and self-belief. The applause had been gratifying, but the real reward was the affirmation that he could achieve something extraordinary, even when the world doubted him. The next day brought new challenges. News of his performance spread quickly among the mansion staff and some of the guests. People approached him with curiosity and admiration, asking about his background and his experiences with the piano. He answered politely, though he remained reserved, careful not to let the sudden attention overwhelm him. There was a certain satisfaction in being respected for talent rather than position, and he navigated these interactions with a quiet confidence that was growing within him. In the days that followed, he found himself reflecting often on the millionaire's words. The challenge had been delivered with mockery, yet it had become a catalyst for his own awakening. He realized that sometimes opportunities come in unexpected forms, wrapped in ridicule or doubt. It is up to the individual to recognize the moment and rise to it, to transform a potentially humiliating situation into one of personal triumph. The concierge had done exactly that, and he felt stronger, more determined than ever. He also noticed subtle changes in how people interacted with him. Guests who had previously ignored his presence now paused to greet him. Staff members treated him with newfound respect, and even the millionaire seemed to regard him with cautious admiration. The social dynamics of the mansion had shifted, not because of wealth or influence, but because of talent and courage. The concierge understood that respect earned through skill and authenticity is far more lasting than respect bought with status or money. Despite the attention, he remained grounded. He continued his work with the same dedication as before, attending to guests and managing the details of the mansion with care. Yet there was a new lightness in his step, a quiet pride in knowing that he carried a gift that could touch hearts and command attention. Each day became an opportunity to explore this gift further, to refine his skill, and to prepare for the moments when he would share it again. In his quiet moments, he allowed himself to dream. He imagined performing in different settings, reaching audiences beyond the mansion and using his talent to inspire others who might feel overlooked or underestimated. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a bridge to new possibilities, a way to express emotions and stories that words alone could not convey. He felt a deep sense of responsibility to honor that gift, to continue growing and sharing it in ways that were authentic and meaningful. And so, the concierge moved forward with a renewed sense of purpose. The challenge from the millionaire had been unexpected, but it had revealed a truth that he could not ignore. Talent, when nurtured and expressed, has the power to transform lives. He had faced doubt and mockery, and he had risen above them with grace and skill. In doing so, he discovered not only the depth of his own ability, but also the strength of character that comes from embracing who you truly are. The journey had only just begun, but he was ready to meet whatever came next with courage, humility, and the music that had always lived within him. The grand hall was alive with the buzz of conversation, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above, casting a warm golden glow over the guests dressed in their finest attire. This was not just any gathering, it was a night of celebration, extravagance, and subtle displays of power. Among the crowd were wealthy businessmen, socialites, and artists, all mingling under the watchful eye of the host, a man known for his fortune and his sharp tongue. The millionaire had a reputation for enjoying the thrill of showing off his wealth, and tonight was no different. In the midst of the lavish scene moved a quiet figure, unnoticed by most. The concierge of the mansion, dressed in his neat uniform, moved with a calm efficiency, making sure every guest had what they needed. He was not part of the glittering elite, nor did he wish to be. His life had been one of service, of long hours and steady routines, and he took pride in doing his work well. Yet beneath the uniform and the polite smile, there was a man who carried a secret, a talent that had long been buried under the weight of responsibility. As the evening progressed, the millionaire stood in the center of the hall, surveying his guest with a critical eye. He noticed the concierge moving silently, attending to every detail without drawing attention. A smirk crossed his face, and in a sudden burst of amusement he called out, drawing the attention of the room, "If you can play that piano as well as you serve, I'll marry you off to someone worthy," he declared, his voice carrying over the chatter. The guests laughed, some out of genuine amusement, others out of the need to appear polite. The words hung in the air, sharp and mocking. The concierge froze for a moment, feeling the weight of every eye upon him. Embarrassment and surprise mingled with a quiet anger. How dare this man, with all his wealth and pride, belittle someone simply because of their place in life? He looked down, straightening his posture, and for the first time that evening allowed himself a private thought. "I will show you." The laughter continued, but the concierge's mind was already turning. He remembered the piano lessons from his youth, the hours he had spent perfecting his technique, the joy he had found in the music. Life had taken him away from that world, but the skill, the passion, and the memory of those moments had never left him. It was as if a spark had been reignited, a challenge thrown that he could not ignore, not for the millionaire, not for the guests, but for himself. He would prove that talent could not be hidden, and that respect had to be earned, not assumed. He moved quietly to a corner out of immediate sight and closed his eyes for a moment. He took a deep breath, feeling the tension in his shoulders ease slightly. The hall continued to buzz with conversation, but to him, it was as if the world had narrowed to a single point, the piano that awaited him. He could almost hear the keys under his fingers, waiting to be played, waiting to speak the words he could not say aloud. As he prepared, he allowed himself a small smile. He knew that accepting this unspoken challenge would not be easy. The room would be filled with expectations, skepticism, and the weight of public scrutiny. But he also knew that he had faced challenges before, not in grand halls or in front of wealthy audiences, but in life itself. Every hardship, every moment of doubt had prepared him for this. The thought gave him a sense of calm determination. Meanwhile, the guests continued their chatter, unaware of the storm of focus gathering in the quiet figure of the concierge. Some whispered about the audacity of the millionaire, while others laughed at the idea of a servant attempting such a thing. Few considered the possibility that this man could rise to the occasion. The room was full of assumptions, and assumptions can be dangerous, for they blind people to truth. The concierge moved slowly toward the piano, his steps measured and deliberate. He had never performed in such a setting, surrounded by so many strangers, yet he felt no fear of the audience itself. Fear of judgment had never been his primary concern. Rather, it was the desire to express something beautiful, something real, that drove him. As he approached the instrument, he placed his hands gently on the keys, feeling the cool surface beneath his fingers. The piano had a voice of its own, one that could speak louder than words or laughter. He glanced at the millionaire who was now standing near the piano, a look of smug anticipation on his face. The guests had gathered closer, sensing that something unusual was about to happen. Some leaned forward, curiosity mixing with doubt. The concierge's heart beat steadily, not with nervousness, but with a quiet resolve. This was not about proving anyone wrong. This was about giving life to the music that had always lived within him. He closed his eyes once more and let his fingers find their place. The first note sounded soft and tentative, almost like a whisper in the grand hall. A murmur ran through the audience, a mixture of surprise and skepticism. The millionaire raised an eyebrow, clearly expecting the note to falter to confirm his jest. But the concierge continued, each note growing stronger, more confident. The melody began to flow, gentle at first, then building with grace and emotion. It was as if the music itself was telling a story, one of hidden talent, unrecognized potential, and the quiet strength of someone who had lived a life of discipline and care. The room changed with each passing note. The laughter had faded, replaced by an attentive silence. Eyes widened, mouths parted slightly in awe, and even the cynical guests could not help but be drawn into the spell of the performance. The music had a way of reaching into the heart, bypassing social status, wealth, and pretense. It spoke of humanity, of the beauty that exists in unexpected places. The concierge's hands moved with precision, yet there was a freedom in the way he played, a blend of control and emotion that revealed the depth of his experience. Memories of his past, of lessons learned and moments cherished, wove themselves into the melody. He was not performing for the millionaire, nor for the approval of the crowd. He was performing for the music itself, and in doing so, he was performing for himself. Every chord, every transition, was a statement of who he was and what he had carried silently for years. As the piece progressed, the audience felt a shift. The room, which had once been filled with chatter and casual amusement, now held its collective breath. There was a magic in the air, a recognition that something rare and genuine was unfolding. The millionaire's smirk had faded, replaced by a look of disbelief. He had expected a failure, a moment of entertainment at another's expense. Instead, he was witnessing mastery, a display of talent that could not be contained by circumstance or social hierarchy. The notes danced, soared, and lingered, filling every corner of the hall. Some guests closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them, while others watched in silent admiration. The concierge remained focused, fully immersed in the moment. Time seemed to stretch and bend around him. The outside world, the judgments, the expectations, all of it ceased to exist. There was only the piano, the music, and the expression of something profoundly human. For a brief moment, it seemed as though the hall itself had become part of the performance. The chandeliers reflected the glow of the music, the walls echoed the emotion, and even the air seemed to vibrate with energy. The concierge's hands moved with effortless skill, translating years of practice and passion into a performance that spoke louder than words ever could. Every note was intentional, every pause meaningful, and every chord resonated with life experience and emotion. By the time he reached the final notes, the room was completely silent. The earlier laughter and chatter replaced by awe and respect. The concierge lifted his hands from the keys and exhaled, a quiet satisfaction washing over him. He had played not to impress, not to prove a point, but to express truth through music. The reaction from the audience, while unexpected, was a testament to the power of authenticity. The millionaire, for the first time that evening, seemed unsure of what to say. The mocking tone was gone, replaced by a stunned silence. He looked around at the gathered guests, many of whom were exchanging glances of amazement. It was a moment of realization. The concierge was not defined by his job, his uniform, or his place in society. He was defined by his talent, his dedication, and his courage to rise to the challenge. The concierge, standing quietly, allowed the silence to speak. There was no need for words. The performance had conveyed everything that needed to be understood. In that moment, he had claimed his place in the room, not through wealth or status, but through skill, heart, and the undeniable beauty of his music. And as the audience absorbed what had just happened, a sense of respect and admiration filled the hall. a silent acknowledgement of the extraordinary hidden in the most ordinary places,